How many times as a designer have you heard, well, this design looks good, but I can't really get a good feeling about it until we put it live in production and test it. I need to be able to interact with it. And oftentimes that means that you have to get an engineer involved or two, you have to deploy something in a stage server, and so on. Well, I've got good news for you because in this video, we're gonna learn how to create a real interactive component with Framer and their recently launched smart component features with a real life example. If you are new to my channel, welcome. My name is Javi and I make weekly videos about product design skills, principles, and practices to help you build great products and bring your ideas to life. If that sounds like something that you're interested in, don't forget to hit subscribe. Framer is a design tool that cares deeply about fidelity. It makes it easier for you to craft production level design at unparalleled ease, now more than ever, without having to write a single line of code. And to tell you more about smart components, let's first dive straight into our design. So here we are in framer.com. I created this project called Tweets. Let's have a look at how that looks like before we get started. I'm just gonna click on the frame here and press on this play button so we can see it prototyped. So as you can see, I've created a very simple feed of tweets. And what's really cool about it is that each of these tweets comes from the very same tweet component, and that component has a hover state. And not just that, but within the component itself, I've nested another component called IconButton, which is what I'm using here to showcase how if I hover over the ability to reply, retweet, or like, it's going to give me both a hover state and a press state. So as you can see, the color gets only slightly darker as I press. And in the case of the like variant, once I press, you can see that it's going to remember the state of being liked. So I can just easily go over through my tweets and like and dislike. And how to build this is what we're going to be looking at right now. So I'm just going to go ahead and come here to my top right corner to close the prototype. And we're going to start off by coming to my start screen here. And we're just going to slowly replicate one after the other the steps that I've done to create this experience. So let's start off by designing one of those tweets. The first thing that we can do is press on my F key to create a frame. And I'm going to hold my shift key to make sure it's proportional as I move down. And we're going to make this a 40 by 40. So just going to bring it here and now just change this manually. It's a 40 by 40 now. And now what I'm going to do is come down here to my radius and make this also 40 as well. Now we want this to be an image. So instead of this fill, I'm going to click on it, and where it says image here, I'm going to choose the Unsplash native integration, and I'm just going to search here for person. And let's say I'm going to go ahead with this one from Christopher Campbell. Thank you, Christopher, for making this image available on Unsplash. And as you can see, now we have a rounded frame with the profile image of the author of a tweet. So I'm going to go ahead and change this to profile image. Next, I'm going to add a name to the post author. So we're going to just press my T key here to start a text. I'm going to call this, let's say, Susan Doyle. And I'm going to come down here to my text properties and make the style a little bit bolder. So let's go, for example, with semi-bold. I think that looks pretty good. And I'm just going to make sure that we are following a nice implicit grid here from the very start. So I'm going to nudge it over to 12 pixel difference with respect to my profile image. I'm going to hold my Alt key and just drag along to create another text layer. And this one's going to be our description. So for this, I'm going to change the style back to regular. I'm going to increase the line height a little bit since this might have multiple lines of text. Let's go with 1.4. And I'm going to, before editing that text, going to make the width of this text 500. I think that should be good enough for a tweet length. All right. Hello. This is my first tweet on this amazing Framer project illustrating smart components. And now let's just make sure that as we do that, we adjust the height here to fit content. And that's just going to make sure that there's no overflow for what we've written. Now I can make this a little bit better in terms of the spacing, maybe 8 pixels. So what I can do now is just make sure that these are aligned just by dragging them along the lines here for the constraints. And the next thing that we want to do is create that icon button, right? So that is exactly the element here that we're using to be able to show the reply, the retweet, and the like. So what I'm going to do for that is leverage an existing library of icons called feather icons. You may be familiar with this if you've been doing design for a while. And what's really great about Framer is that there is a very easy way to introduce feather icons into your design by pressing on the I key or coming here to your insert menu, and you can just look for it by searching feather and make sure to be able to install it in your project so then you can insert any feather icon without having to import them externally from their website. It makes design that much faster. What I'm going to do is I'm going to click on insert, and as you can see now we have an icon component from feather. Now I don't want this to be a home icon, I want it to be the circular message. So all I have to do to change that is come here to my icon properties, come over to name, and let's just search message. And as you can see, I have message circle, message square. I'm going to go ahead with message circle. That's exactly the icon that we wanted. And I'm just going to change the color here. Let's start by bringing it down to dark. And then I always like to switch between hex and HSL to be able to get the luminosity here all the way up to 50%. So we get this nice intermediary gray. So that looks great. I'm going to nudge it over to be a little bit closer to my text here. So let's make this, let's say 12 pixels from the paragraph. And next what we're going to do is integrate this as part of a component that we're going to call IconButton to then be able to create the hover and the press states. So I'm going to actually wrap this into another frame, and that's going to be our component. So I'm going to bring this down to 18 pixel width and height just to make it a tiny bit smaller, and I'm going to wrap it in a 32 by 32 frame. So let's just make sure we get out of that width input. I'm going to press my F key, and we're going to create again a 32 pixel frame here. And off the bat, I'm going to come over here to my radius, and because I know we want to make this circular, I'm going to give this also a 32 pixel radius so that it's a perfect circle. I'm going to actually come to my fill value here and remove the fill because we're not going to need that at the moment. But as you can see, the frame is still there. So I'm going to just copy paste it in place. So now we have two exact layers that are rounded frames. And I'm just going to be using one for the background, which we're going to be leveraging as part of those states. And the other one is just going to serve as the frame for our component. So I can just go ahead and call this IconButton. And we're going to put background inside IconButton. And now I can grab this icon here and bring it inside, not inside of background, but inside of IconButton. So we have the icon and then the background that sits nicely right below it. We have everything we need to come over here to our IconButton frame. And in order to create a component out of this, all you have to do is hover over this section here called component and click on it to create a component, and we can call it IconButton. Now I already have an IconButton created, so just to make sure that we can edit it properly, I'm going to just add a 2 here, and I'm going to click on create. So as you can see, as we've created that component, it's taken us to a specific view that's going to be all about that component and its states and variants. So if we zoom in to get a little bit more detail here, you can see that on the right, Framer is encouraging me to add variants of this component. And on the bottom, there is a placeholder for the states of this component, and it's encouraging us to start with hover or pressed. Let's start off by changing the name of this variant from variant1 to reply. If you want to create a state for this component, all you have to do is come down here and click on the hover press state. So we're going to do just that, and I'm going to want to have a hover in this case. So now, as you can see, I have my hover state here, and you can tell by the name of the frame, it's called reply hover. It's an instance of the base component. And what I'm going to do with this one, I've already defined the colors here. So this is going to be rather easy at this stage. All I have to do is click on the icon first. And in this case, we're going to want the color of the icon to change as we hover over it. And for that, we're going to be using our reply color here. And for the background, I'm going to select background layer, and I'm going to change the fill to reply background. And that is as far as we want to take this particular state. Now, if I click on it again and I look down here, you can see that there's an additional placeholder that is for the pressed variant. And in this case, we're going to want to do that. So I'm just going to click on pressed variant. And as you can see, now we have 3 variants of our base component. And all I want to do here is make the colors just a tiny bit darker. So in this case, I don't have the colors defined. All I did is come over to the color here for the icon. And instead of reply, I'm going to select choose custom. And this is why I like to use HSL, because all I have to do here is increase the luminosity to get where I want, right? So instead of 41 luminosity, we're going to bring it down to, let's say, 30, or actually not too much, maybe let's say 32. And that looks pretty good. And in terms of the background, we can do the exact same thing. Come over here, select choose custom, and instead of 90, let's go with something like 80, maybe 84. We can make it obvious for this example just so you see it. And if at any point you want to see how this component is going to behave live, all you have to do is come over here to your base, click on play from the frame. And if I can zoom in, no, I can't zoom in, but just so you get the idea, you can see that I can hover and I can press, and we are getting everything that we wanted out of this component. So to leave, I can just click on the X here for cancel. And now we are back here. To create the other 2 variants for our retweet and our like, let me come over here to our icon button, which I created earlier, just so I can show you what that looks like. So now you have all the steps in mind that you have to do to be able to craft this on your own. As you can see, I have the exact same structure that we just did. I have our reply primary, I have the hover and the press state for this particular component. And then what I did is I created 2 variants, one for retweet and one for the like. And as you can see, it's the exact same process. All you have to do is create the retweet. I came in here to our feather icon, and instead of keeping that message circle, I just changed it to repeat. And for the case of the like, I'm using the heart icon. And then all I had to do is define just a different set of colors that match what's currently in Twitter to give it that real feel. There is one additional variant here that I created, and that is to be able to show how if I click on the like button, it's going to stay liked as we are experiencing it in the prototype. And I achieved that by simply creating an extra variant of this component called liked. And the main difference is that, first of all, liked, the base state of like is going to be with the icon filled with red. Now, I couldn't fill the entire heart because we are using the feather icon library here, and I'm not able to add a fill. But if you have a custom vector or another icon that includes a variation with fill, you can make that even nicer probably if you had a filled heart instead of just using the stroke. But for this particular example, I just stick to feather icon. And as you can see, the other 2 states are pretty much the same. So all that matters is creating this particular variant here. And then what's really important is that in order to be able to tell Framer to go back and forth between the 2, all you have to do is create an interaction. And to create an interaction, all you have to do is press your L key or come over here to the interaction section here in your top bar and just drag the connector over to this light component. And as you can see, what we have here is an automatically animated interaction that when I tap on my like component, it's going to automatically switch over to the light variant. And that is what we wanted to achieve. And if we come over to the liked variant, you can see that it's the exact same situation, but the other way around. So if I were to click on the liked variant, it's going to take me back to that like variant. So that is everything that you need to know in order to set up that interaction. And you don't even have to wire up all the other states. All you have to connect is the base variant between the two states. So let's go back into our tweets here, and let's just say that we continue using the IconButton component here. So I'm just going to drag it over to my frame. And now all we have to do is bring it here. We said this would be a 12 pixel spacing. And now we need to add the other two variants. And the way you can do that is holding your Alt key, bringing it, let's say, over here. And where it says variant, I'm going to change this from reply to retweet. And now let's hold the Alt key again to create our third and last icon button. Let's bring it all the way to the right. And I'm going to change it from variant retweet to like. And now if you want to get that even spacing between the icons with Framer, all you have to do is select them and right click and select create stack or add stack. And what that's going to do is it's going to put them together into a smart stack of components. And what that means is that you can essentially distribute the spacing between the components in a very intuitive way. So you can select the direction. Maybe you want it horizontally or vertically. In this case, we want it to keep it horizontal. We want to keep the distribution, in this case, let's say space between. So if I were to, let's say, add a bookmark icon button, all I have to do is select any of these, Command C, Command V, and as you can see, as you add icons, it's going to make sure that the space between them stays the same. So now that we have everything that we needed here for our tweet, what I'm going to do now is press my F key to create another frame, and I'm going to do this to have a little divider that's going to be automatically added to my tweets so that when I'm stacking them horizontally, I don't have to create that divider additionally and put it between the components. So we can change the height here to 1. And before we start to adjust the width of this divider, let's just make sure that we have everything here selected and added into a frame for our tweet. I'm going to just do Command Enter, which is the shortcut to create a frame in Framer. And as you can see, everything now is part of this frame. We can call this, let's say, tweet content. And now what we can do is bring this divider down here. Let's say we wanted to keep it at a similar spacing as we had between our icons and our text here. And I just realized, by the way, that I forgot to change this variant over to like. So now that looks good. And I'm just going to make sure to bring this over to match that distance. And of course, this doesn't feel quite right because what we actually want to have is a little bit of padding on the sides. And that divider is still going to go all the way. So in our case, what that means is I'm going to bring these two together. I'm going to press Command Enter again to create another frame that includes the tweet content and the divider. And now I'm going to add a little bit of spacing manually. So if I just move over here, I come into my frame and then holding Command to make sure that nothing else is moving, I'm just going to drag this over, let's say somewhere here. And that should give me about, yes, that's exactly 16 pixels. And I'm going to come over to my right as well. I think I could have done that automatically, adding space to both sides, but that's okay. And let's see, that should be about 16 pixels as well. And now I just want to make sure that this divider is going to go all the way to the sides. So I'm going to change this frame name to divider to make it clear what we're dealing with. and I'm going to bring it all the way to the edge. And the same thing is going to happen from the left side. So let's go ahead and do that. And now all that's missing is to get a little bit more padding also from the top. I'm going to have a 12 pixel distance here, again holding my command key to make sure that nothing else moves while we're scaling this up. And as you can see, now I have that perfect padding for the content of the tweet. With that said, we have everything that we wanted for our tweet. Now, if you'll recall, the way to create a component out of this is coming up here to component, and let's go ahead and click it to create the component. We can call this tweet. Now, I already have a tweet component, so I'm going to call this tweet2 in the meantime. And instead of sticking around tweet2, I'm just going to take you straight away to the tweet component that I had earlier because the adjustments are very easy. I added a background color of white to my base primary. I created the hover state, and instead of keeping it white, all I did is come here to my fill and just add a little bit of a decrease in luminosity to be able to show that hover as we're going through the tweets. So now that you know how this component was made, we can come back here to our tweets. I'm gonna just go ahead and remove this. And by the way, one additional thing I did here compared to what we had before is make sure I changed the color of our divider. So this divider should have now a D9, 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 which is just a very light gray with 85% luminosity. So just enough for the user to be able to tell that it's there without being too obvious. So let's go back to our tweets page. And the only thing that's keeping us between here and this particular view right there is, first of all, I created a frame to include the entire stack of the tweets. So this frame is just a very simple rectangle with a width of 608. So to replicate that, just press your F key and let's create something like this. I'm gonna manually change the width to 608. Let's have this be a little bit higher up in height. And the reason why I did this is because I'm gonna create a stack of tweets, and that stack of tweets is going to live on a card that has a radius. And for me, it was just easier to be able to create this with an additional frame here that would serve that purpose of being able to create a radius simply. So we're going to just change that to 8. And now we can just bring it over here to our center using the guides that Framer is providing us. I can't recall what exact spacing here I had for the top. Maybe it was 120. And as you can see, I also added a Twitter logo here. The way that you can add it to your project is come over here to your insert menu, search for logos, make sure that you have this package installed. Now I can enter into it and insert a logo here. And so you see that the default is this Framer logo. I'm going to place it at, let's say 32 and 24, maybe the other way around, 24 and 32. And to change this, all you have to do is come over here to the company input. And if you search for Twitter, it's going to automatically find you the Twitter logo that you're going to be able to put there as your header. And one tiny little extra detail that I added to our other frame here, just to show that quickly to you, is I wrapped this logo that we downloaded into a component of my own that lives in my own project so that I could come in here and create a little hover variant where the logo is a little bit rotated to the left. And if you want to see how that looks like in action again, all you have to do is come in here, press play on the end screen. And if I hover, as you can see, there's this very slight hover effect of being able to rotate the Twitter logo just a little bit. And yeah, I just thought that was kind of fun. So coming back here to our stack, what I'm going to do is drag along these tweets, right? So this is going to be rather simple. All you have to do is, I think I kept a little bit of padding at the top. Maybe it was 8 and then 8 on the sides. And just to create that tweet thread, all you have to do is put them one after the other. And after you have a couple of these, you will find yourself in a similar situation as what I have going on here. If you want to change the copy or the content of these tweets, remember if you right click, it will actually take you to the component view. The way that you can change the copy is by coming here to the tweet properties. And in this case, I defined 3 variables. One is username, the tweet content, and the image. We can keep these as they are for the first tweet, but let's say you wanted to come here to the second one. And as you can see, if I change this to any other type of content, it's going to automatically change on the canvas itself. And that is how variables come into play. It allows you to create specific properties of your components that you can override as you create instances of your base component. So now if you come back to the end state, you will notice that all I did to create these instances is, again, just come to the properties here and adjust the values to whatever it is that you want to show. If you want to adjust the name of your properties or add additional properties to your component, all you have to do is go into your component here and click on the section here where it says variables. And this is where your variables are going to live. So in this case, you can see we have the props for username, the tweet content, and the image. And once you have everything put together, you can go ahead and click on your prototype. And as expected, if you hover over your tweets, you're going to have that nice hover interaction. If you go between the icon buttons here and you hover and you press, you get that interaction as well. And if you like any particular tweet, the component is going to stay in that liked variant as we've defined before. And you can go back and forth between the 2 states. So that was it for today. This was my first video about Framer. Please like this video and let me know in the comments if you found this interesting and would like to see more content like this in the future. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button to catch me next week with another video about product design. As always, stay safe and I will catch you in the next one.